Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone. I'm so excited that you're with us on the show today because I'm here with Vivian Rosenthal, the founder of Snaps. Vivian, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I would love to start out with an introduction to the work your team is doing because I've been thinking a lot lately about this emoji takeover, but you've been thinking about it a lot longer.
Yeah, probably longer than I expected to be. So Snaps is the name of our company, and we had this idea that we should basically help connect brands and film studios and TV shows and celebrities and social causes and nonprofits to their fans, consumers, viewers, people who like that particular cause, and in the messaging space. And no one was really thinking about a really sort of platform agnostic approach to how to do that. And so that's what Snaps is. It's basically a way to connect a particular brand to their audience in messaging. And so just to give you some context, there's over 270 billion text messages sent every single day, which is obviously a staggering number. The open rate in messaging is 92%, which is incredibly high. Right, and people like messaging because it's peer-to-peer, so you get content from your friends, and that's what our platform allows. It allows for me to send a piece of content to you that might be for, say, the movie Deadpool, and so I'm recommending it to you, or it could be for Delish, and I'm sending you a food clip. But it's always coming from me to you. It's from peer-to-peer. It's not coming from the brand. And so what that does is it really flips advertising on its head. And so instead of the social media model, which is a broadcast model where, on Facebook or Twitter, the brand is putting something out there and sort of waving their hands and hoping you'll like it, which is fairly passive, messaging flips that on its head and says, we're just going to let people share content with their friends who like a particular brand or product or whatnot and want to recommend it to their friends. And so that's why we've seen 2015, the top 4 messaging apps actually eclipsed the top 4 social networks in terms of monthly active users, which is a really critical turning point in terms of how brands think about spending their marketing dollars in the mobile space.
Before we really dive in and go into some examples, because I love being able to demonstrate your work that way, I think it's really exciting. How did we get here? Because someone was just asking me, what emojis describe you? And it just made me think, if I didn't have my emojis on my phone, I would feel like I was losing a part of my ability to express myself.
Right. So it's a great question. Well, I think actually how we got here is really is in some ways a return to hieroglyphics, right? So it's actually not necessarily a departure from the past. I think it's just an update, right? So we've always been, back to drawings like, in caves. We've always been a very, a society that communicates visually. That's, cave drawings and hieroglyphics and many other things that we can point to historically have shown that we feel like we can show a lot of emotion and convey a lot of meaning through visuals, right? And so I was pretty bullish on the idea that the language of the future is a visually based language, right? If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then so is an emoji or a GIF or a video are worth however many millions of words if you string them together.
The next level.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think that with initially with the rise of the iPhone and the sort of standard emoticon keyboard that was introduced, that sort of allowed people to have a very easy way to interact with these emojis, with these emoticons, with these sort of like visual images that conveyed tons of emotion, right? So a friend sends you something and exactly like if they've had a bad day or a good day or they're excited to see you or they love you or whatnot. And so, I think it was only a matter of time until that endpoint for Apple opened up and suddenly then, you could have something that was for a social cause as a way to, let people understand more about the cause, or if it was for a brand or if it was for a TV show. So it's been, actually it was a result of Apple introducing the sort of emoticons in that mainstream way, which meant tens of millions of people with iPhones suddenly had access to it. So that was sort of like the stepping point for, or the introductory point to make it more mainstream. But I think visual communications has been something that's always been with us.
And you guys started out at Snaps as consumer, but quickly shifted to
Yeah.
B2B. Why did you do that so early on?
So we shifted because one, we realized that, the consumer game, like having a consumer facing app it's a totally different type of business than a B2B to C play. And um, it's very hard to predict. Consumers are unpredictable, right? And so it's very hard to predict the next Snapchat, right? People try to all the time, and there's hundreds of apps that come out, and most of them end up being roadkill. And so we sort of quickly realized that, like, how to, rather than trying to guess at what would be popular, why don't we make something that actually is providing value to brands, and they will pay us, and there was a real business model, and because it provides value to them and consumers use it, it creates a very valuable ecosystem. So we sort of tested out that hypothesis. It ended up being correct, and then we sort of stuck with that path.
And so many brands, I mean, even in the early days, looking at some articles from a couple of years ago, really caught on to this quickly. How were you positioning it to them when you first started? Because the game certainly changed now.
Yeah, I mean, I think now brands definitely understand the sort of lexicon of emojis and like how it adds to their marketing and advertising efforts. But yeah, initially we were doing a lot of, we were meeting with a lot of brands and ad agencies and media companies and actually helping them to understand the messaging landscape. So it's both like a nascent but massive space. And so a lot of what we were doing was being like the thought leaders in the space and helping them understand how much opportunity there was to reach consumers in what had otherwise been a very, you know, a very sort of opaque and difficult space to navigate.
And now you guys partner with sports teams, huge organizations, Nike. So, I mean, the list really does go on. What are they most excited about when they meet with you now?
Well, I think a few things. One, they clearly recognize the rise of mobile messaging, and with that is some of the newer things like, so there's branded keyboards, there's chatbots, and we're basically offering as many endpoints into messaging as possible for our clients. But I think they're excited that they can create an authentic way for their consumers or fans, depending on what type of brand it is, to talk with each other and have the brand be part of that conversation, right? So if we're both big fans of the show Broad City, we can, share clips of that show or share emojis, and and literally all the brand might be doing is sending us a push notification saying, like, remember, tune in at 7 p.m. Central or whatever to watch the show. So it's suddenly like it's moving from, before advertising was very heavy on, banner ads and pre-roll and all these things that we just basically wanted to get out of the way
Yes,
to get
yeah.
to the content we actually wanted. Yeah, to something that's now in a format that's shareable and that's very snackable, that people actually like. They want the content for the content itself and to share it with friends and to have this as like visual currency. So it's no longer a banner ad or a pre-roll that you're like, oh, I don't want this thing, I'm just trying to get to this other thing. It's like the content has actually become the thing that people want because they like the medium itself. So brands are obviously keen to have a way to distribute and publish content that they know people are going to be excited to interact with.
And for a brand who's considering taking the leap into this, but still isn't sure, despite the stats, how can they get started and experiment?
Yeah, so we probably like the most, I guess the most basic way for a brand to get started would be to build with us an emoji keyboard, right? And then if they wanted to make it a little bit more advanced, we can add in GIFs, we can add in video clips. So you can, when you think about it, for a lot of brands, like video views are a holy grail, and we can track video views in messaging without having the person to have to go off to YouTube, because YouTube is ultimately not a very social environment. Like, you don't watch a YouTube video and then to share a link is kind of cumbersome or whatever. But if you're just watching a YouTube clip inside a keyboard and you can then easily share it with a friend, that's a much more social experience. So part of it is, it's just is sort of these paradigm shifts in terms of user behavior and what people want to do and how they want to consume and how they want to share.
And how do you predict or foresee right now the evolution of this playing out? What are we going to be talking about at the end of the year, mid next year?
Yeah, I think it's going to be brand chatbots or branded chatbots, depending on what you want to call it. But basically, the ability for me to have a conversation, with the show Mr. Robot, or for me to have a conversation with Nike about the latest like Jordans that are dropping, or for me to speak to Delish and get a recipe for like a new gluten-free pizza I want to make, But I think like we're moving the sort of, the shift is away from search for something on Google and you get like 1,000 answers to, let me have like a one-on-one conversation with a chatbot that actually can deliver up answers that are specific to like stuff that I'm interested in or want to learn about. And that just is it sort of makes sense in terms of thinking about how we're going to, streamline the way we interact with things so that there's greater utility. And obviously a chatbot can learn about you and start to know your preferences and things you like and make suggestions and recommendations. I mean, I think the best example that we all use and know very well is Amazon, right? But then sort of if you could have an experience where it's not just buying product, but you're getting a new clip from your favorite TV show, and then maybe there's a trivia quiz about like one of your favorite actors on the show, or maybe it's like sending you some like sneak peeks of upcoming footage. But obviously it's like these things are very curated experiences that are specific to you and your likes. Or when I should say your likes, your preferences, like things that you enjoy learning about, So you might have, we both are very interested in food as an example. So, I am constantly going to Google and searching things, but I would love if there was a way, and this is what Snaps is building, but, so that we have various chatbots for our different food clients where I can just like open it up in the morning and it's like, morning, Viv, like, hey, like here's this like awesome new gluten-free,
oh my God,
recipe that you could make, or like, oh, here's this new like juice store that opened up that sells like gluten-free granola, or whatever it might be, but it adds some value to my life, right? That's the point. Is it's sort of like it's both fun and it adds value. So I think that's what people are looking for. So I think chatbots are definitely going to be for the rest of 2016 and into 2017. They're going to be really on top of sort of like they're going to be the thing that like everyone is talking about and is experimenting with and is sort of figuring out the right path forward. I think no one knows exactly what that is yet. We're one of a number of companies that are sort of pushing the boundaries on that.
I'd love to dive in with the projects that you guys are working on right now.
Mm-hmm.
What are you most excited about? Where does Snaps fit in here?
Yeah, I mean, so the two things that I'm most excited about are branded keyboards and branded chatbots, just because they're two new ways for people to either talk to each other about content or share content, or talk to a bot about content and learn something or get some information or have some utility. So I think depending on whether keyboards are inherently very social, chatbots are much more utility based. So I think like between the two, they cover sort of like a wide spectrum of use cases. And so for us, like I'm excited about both just because we're building out both for our clients depending on like really what their goals are, right? And how they want to interact with fans or customers or how they want to make people aware of something new. So, but I think it's definitely interesting to think about how we can have sort of these collective simultaneous moments with things where through messaging, because it's something that works really on a global scale. You can have like shifts in consciousness or people learning about things like very quickly. And that's obviously we saw that with social media, and I think that just gets even more heightened with messaging.
As far as the projects that you guys are working on right now, do you feel like it's very uncharted territory, or are you thinking, we've seen the evolution of this, I'm confident we're going to go in this direction?
Yeah, no, I feel like we've seen the evolution of it. We've helped shape the evolution of it, and I feel like we absolutely know. I'm not saying we know how it's going to end up, but we know at least like which direction the ship is sailing in. And so we've charted our course or our path, so to speak. But then how the entire landscape unfolds is unknown. I mean, no one can know that. I mean, everyone can make predictions, but I think it's only time that will really weigh in and tell us.
And as we continue to observe that, does every brand need to seriously be considering these new ways to communicate with their users, their community, their customers?
Yeah, I would say absolutely yes. I mean, that's like saying to a brand back in the day, like, do you need a .com, right? And it says, say you have like J. Crew and The Gap, and one of them has a website, and the other one's like, why do I need a website? Like, I've got my physical store. And, fast forward, and obviously it's like, whatever, 50% of like all their merchandise is sold online, right? So it's like they needed a .com. And then Facebook opened up, and they were like, oh, do I really need a Facebook page? Like, yes. And then it's like, do I need a Twitter handle? Yes. Do I need an Instagram page? Yes. And we're going to see it's the same kind of playbook, same kind of pattern recognition in messaging. It's like, if I'm going back, if it's like J. Crew and The Gap, do I need a presence in messaging? And it's like, well, if you want to stay competitive, then yes. If you want to be on people's minds and have them choose your brand and have them purchase your products, then yes. So I think it's absolutely critical for any brand, because it's where ultimately a brand is only as good as their consumer base, right? And so they need to stay relevant. And if people are moving in droves into messaging, then it's pretty critical that they have a presence there.
And so it's really no longer about, let me get ahead of the game. This is a competitive advantage. You have to do this to remain relevant, or you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, I think it's moving out of the realm of like in the beginning, whenever there's like sort of a new thing, it's like more experimental. I think we're moving past the experimental phase into just like, this is a necessary part of your strategy as a brand is to be in mobile messaging.
Well, I'm so appreciative that we got to really highlight that, because you guys are leading the way, and as of course but all of us are now observing, the conversations are really heightening about this. People are getting excited. What's the best way for individuals, for brands, for companies to learn about this and how to adapt their strategy so they can compete?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that there's I mean, I guess maybe to study what's been done over the last, year and a half, right? There's a lot of good case studies out now living in the world. A lot of brands have sort of carved a path forward. So I think there's a lot from what's been done that brands can learn from, so that they're not trying to reinvent the wheel every time, but they're taking best practices and applying it. So I would say like probably looking at what's been done.
Anything that you would want to highlight for like a case study for someone to look up, or a company?
Like the work that Dove did around curly haired emojis was, they really saw an insight around sort of the lack of love for women with curly hair, and addressed it in a very head-on way that was really powerful and very successful in terms of engagement with the brand, and then also brand lift in terms of people buying their product. So I think that's a great example for brands to look at.
Fantastic. And is that one that you guys have on your site? Because I know you have something about Dove on the site.
Yeah, I think we should, and if not, it's going to be up there. So we're putting up a case study video soon about it. So if it's not up there now, it will be soon.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.
Thank you.